Welcome back. It is MRN's Wing Nation, presented by Sage Fruit here on MAV TV. The Hercules Tire guest here today. This is a guy I've wanted to get in here all year long, a couple years now to chat. Bill Wilburn joins us. Hey, Billy, how are you, man?
I'm doing good.
Good. Good to see you. Now, Billy's real job, and we'll get to this a little bit later on, he works for Justin Allgaier's NASCAR Xfinity Series team. Bill, I had this thing all figured out with you. You're born in Tempe, Arizona, so it makes all the sense in the world you're a sprint car guy, but then you show up and say you moved to Winston-Salem when you were 2 weeks old.
That's right.
So how did a kid from Winston-Salem become a sprint car driver?
Well, it's I tell you, when I worked at Hendrick Motorsports for Darrell Waltrip, good friend of mine, Eddie Dickerson, said, we got to have some fun. So we bought 2 micro sprints.
Really?
Yeah. Actually, we bought 1. Ended up getting 2 later. And the story goes like this. We were going to race it one weekend, he'd run. Next weekend, I would run. So I said, listen, you race this thing first in case it don't make it through my weekend, because he was a pretty good driver. He had actually raced quite a bit and done some dirt racing, and he's from Milford, Delaware. Okay. So we bought 1 car, ran a little bit. Then I got my weekend, ran. I said, this is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So that's how it all started right there. Bought a micro sprint, then we bought another one. Went through a couple years of that. Then moved to the mini sprints. Not a lot of racing for mini sprints around here at that time. So ran a few races there, and I said, you know what? I think we got to get a sprint car. So that was my next move.
I love it. I mean, it just like that.
Yeah.
It's so easy. But, you know, being in the North Carolina area, obviously it's an asphalt diverse, so to speak. What made you go to dirt? Because you didn't grow up with a family that raced dirt, essentially.
Well, I like dirt. I didn't have a lot of history in it up until that point, obviously. But I looked at late models and Concord, Hickory, and did a lot of asphalt racing in my lifetime. And I said, you know what? I'm only one guy trying to pull together a little group. I said, those guys wreck and tear stuff up every week. Mm-hmm. And my work time frame, I didn't feel like would allow me to build a late model every week. But a dirt car, I said, this doesn't seem like it would be that bad. So there we go. That's what we did.
So you jumped from the small car to the sprint cars, but we're still in North Carolina. I mean, I know there's some 360 racing through here and a little bit there. What was it like then? And was it a you just traveled to wherever at that point when you first got into the sprint cars?
Yeah, when we first started there, URC would come as far south as Virginia.
Okay. Yeah.
So we ran some there, and there was an AWOL, American Winged Outlaw Sprints, out of Georgia. And they had some races in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee. So we would run some races with those groups from time to time. You know, you had different wing rules, different tire rules, but the engine rules were pretty close. So that made it possible to do some stuff there. And then ASCS was American Sprint Car Series with Emmett Hahn was getting rolling pretty good at the time. And I had a real good friendship with Emmett from running micros and mini sprints at the shootout. The week prior
the Tulsa shootout, that's right.
Yeah, prior to the week of the Chili Bowl. So I didn't have a lot to do with helping ASCS get to this part of the country, but I certainly did voice my opinion on their rules and the good things that ASCS was doing at the time. So anyway, that kind of progressed this way, and then he had some national races that moved this way and toward the North Carolina area. And so I got more and more involved in running the 360 series, to be honest with you, than anything else. And that allowed us to get 30 or 40 races a year.
There you go.
When you talk about working for Waltrip and, you know, that kind of journey, how did that really work with your racing and working at the same time?
He didn't sleep a lot. It was, most of the dirt races are on the weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and then that's when we were traveling. So Eddie actually come up with this brainstorm of, hey, we'll take the cars with us. And I was like, oh my goodness, how are we going to do this? And so that was short-lived, obviously. And when we, as I progressed along, got more motors, more equipment, and obviously wanted to race more. At that time I was working with Rusty Wallace at Penske. So I kind of took a position on the test team at the time, which testing was big back then. Yeah. And that allowed me a little more leadway with my schedule. And I was still in the pit crew, so I had to be there on weekends for the race. But it opened up my week in first part of the weekend where I could actually go and race more. So that's kind of how that all worked out.
That's fascinating. It really, truly is. We need to step away because he's a tire changer for Rusty Wallace and a sprint car racer. We want to continue with his story, though, and see where this takes us. So stay with us. More with Billy Wilburn in just a moment. Welcome back. It is MRN's Wing Nation, presented by Sage Fruit here on MAV TV. Love visiting with some of my NASCAR buds. We talk on the race weekends a lot about sprint car racing, and it's great to have Billy Wilburn joining us as our Hercules Tires guest. Bill, when we left you, you were a tire changer for Rusty and a sprint car driver as well, and on the test team. The challenge of getting back and forth, though, was it planes, trains, and automobiles to get to some of these racetracks, or how did that work?
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Airplanes, driving all night. It just depended. Rusty, I have to give a lot of thanks to Rusty because during that time, I mean, there was a few races where he actually sent a plane, picked me up. It allowed me to race and would fly me back and forth. That stuff doesn't happen anymore. I was very, very, very fortunate. And, there was a lot of stuff that like we raced Dover. URC's right there. I mean, they run... or Delaware 13, US
right.
13, Hagerstown, a lot of racing in the Northeast that really played into Pocono. You could actually race Friday and Saturday night and be right there for the stock car race on Sunday. So a lot of that stuff worked out and allowed me to race and still do my job in NASCAR. So. But in today's world, I don't think you'll be able to do that. There's just so much scrutiny on everybody, and being able to pay attention to your job and be ready to go when the buzzer rings on Saturday or Sunday morning. Going out sprint car racing all night is not probably going to
Not conducive.
No.
It's true. It's true. And you talk about Rusty Wallace, and I think that's an interesting story in itself. You were a tire changer, and then you go to the crew chief role for Rusty Wallace. Yeah. How did that really come about? I mean, talk about moving up the ladder.
I've thought about that myself. I have to, like I said, I'm very appreciative of Rusty and Roger Penske for giving me that opportunity. I'm racing sprint cars, and the next thing I know, I've got an opportunity to be crew chief. So that was quite a shift in direction, if you will. But obviously, my sprint car time, the part of my life when I raced sprint cars was one of the most exciting times of my life. I learned a lot. I was moderately successful at my level. Obviously, not World of Outlaws and some of the higher levels of sprint car racing, but Rusty believed in me enough to give me a couple years of crew chief experience, with Penske, which is another great part of my life.
Yeah.
And it's so my racing career has been rather exciting, if you want to put it that way.
So you no longer can drive because you obviously tire changer versus crew chief on the weekend is a total different rule. So you no longer can drive, but you maintained for a couple of years as a team owner. You tabbed Johnny Herrera. How did you manage all of that with Johnny Herrera wheeling your car and you being the team owner?
Well, that's one of the reasons that I picked Johnny, to be honest with you. I was looking at Shane Stewart, and I actually had an offer from some people in New York to do some stuff with Aaron Crocker at the time. Yeah. And I went with Johnny because Johnny was I knew Johnny and his dad, Joe Herrera, for several years prior to actually me sprint car racing, and he was a friend of mine, and I felt like he could do a really good job. He would take care of my equipment, and he was able to bring a little bit of cash along to help pay the bills. And we only ran about 60 races a year for a couple years there. And, I really would have liked to have made sprint car racing a career, whether it be owner or driver, but financially it just didn't work out. And so after a couple years of that, I decided I needed to shut the sprint car deal down and focus on what I can make a living doing.
Get that, totally. Yes.
Yeah.
And just to bring it up to speed to where we are now, you work with Justin Allgaier, also a dirt racer. Jumps in for the Chili Bowl, and then a shameless plug, a lethal chassis modified every now and again he gets to run. What's it like working with a dirt racer?
I think it's one of the best situations. I believe if you've got dirt experience, you're a better racer, period. And Justin, the first year we had with Justin, he was getting used to our stuff there at JRM, and we had a good season. But as you know, he's picked it up every year since. And this year here, we've got a shot at a championship, and for not only our team's sake, but for Justin Allgaier's sake, I hope we can pull it out for him.
Final question for you, Billy. There's a rush that you get as a sprint car driver. Face it, that's why you guys do that. That's when you guys strap in. You got that rush in that mini sprint, and you've had that rush. Being a car chief on a NASCAR team, how does that compare? Scratching that itch, if you will. I know you probably want to be about, but how does that do? Scratching that itch for competitiveness.
I don't think you can ever scratch that itch the same way compared to driving or working on them. But we work. All the guys on our team work hard to build a car that's capable of winning, and when you win, that scratches that itch. And when you don't, it's discouraging and it's tough. But there's nothing like just driving a sprint car, period.
Yeah.
And if you've never done it, you have to do it if you want to race. If you ever do it, you'll probably say, I don't really know there's anything that would be any more exciting than that. Kyle Larson.
Yeah.
Tony Stewart, the list goes on. Casey Keene, all the guys that are doing it now that are crossovers from NASCAR, look what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And if you're a true racer and you like speed, sprint cars are it.
I don't think we can end on a better note. If you're a true racer and like speed, sprint cars are about it. Billy, we appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us here.
Thank you for having me.
What a thrill. Billy Wilburn joining us here. Hey, we need to step away. When we come back, our Tweet Your Seat Tweets of the Week.